the greatest metric to show that we are getting stronger is PRs. PRs are the thing. And it doesn't mean it's 1 rep max all the time, but PRs are what we're chasing as often as possible. You're listening to Barbell Logic, brought to you by Barbell Logic Online Coaching, where each week we take a systematic walk through strength training and the refining power of voluntary hardship.
Welcome to the Barbell Logic podcast. I am Scott Hambrick. That over there drinking out of that cup. What is in that cup?
Elijah Craig Barrel Proof.
Elijah Craig.
No, it's not. It's I was like, man, that tastes awfully weedy to be.
That's the old
Elijah
Scout.
Craig. It's 107. It's Weller 107.
Ah.
I started to go with Elijah Craig. I thought, man, Barrel Proof. It's a little early to be drinking 70% alcohol. What is it, about 1 o'clock in the afternoon?
Yeah, it's 1 on a Saturday. We're here in the Reynolds new library room at the new house, and we're getting ready to do a show on the 3 principles for sensible MED, minimum effective dose programming. Well, you want one of the Hamburg rules first?
What is it?
If you do something, you need to do it for reasons.
Yeah.
You need to know what your reasons are.
Of course.
Yeah, people do things because that's the way we always did it. I'll do it because mom told me.
Yep.
This is the way they do it at my school.
Yep.
But you need to know what the reasons are.
Yeah.
So even when you're
You have the
wrong,
why.
when you stick a stake in the ground, when you're wrong, you know where to at least move it from.
Yeah.
And then if you're right, you know how to reproduce it. You've got to have reasons. I see people do things because, well, people actually say, well, just cause.
That drives me nuts.
Yeah.
I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before. My 14-year-old daughter is I'm a pretty strict parent. I'm tougher to get along with for sure than Mama is. And my 14-year-old told me probably 6 months ago. She said, "You know what I like about you?" I said, "What?" She said, "You always have a reason for when, like, if you tell me to do this, or you get me in trouble, or you ground me, or whatever those things are. There's punishments or whatever." She said, "You always make sure you explain why. It's not just And my parents, and I got great parents, but my dad would often use the because I told you so, because I'm the boss, because I'm the emperor, because I'm the whatever. But and you know what? That's fine at 3.
Yeah,
but at some point,
there's a time when you don't have time to explain it to the kid.
Sure.
And maybe they're not going to get it all anyway, and you just declare.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you can rule with an iron fist over your own children under a certain age, and then at some point, you still control the fact that they live under your roof and you're paying for their food. But if you haven't invested the time in building that relationship and the whys, this is why we make that decision. The day's going to come when they're 16, 17, 18 years old and they're out and they're done because all you ever did was rule with an iron fist. So whys are important to us for sure.
Yeah, and your reasons can change.
Sure.
Your reasoning can change, but it's really hard to make changes in a rational way if you don't know where you started from.
Yeah.
So that brings us to
that's
these 3 organizing
lead-in.
principles here.
I was thinking about, we were talking about this at lunch today. We train, and you guys have come up. You hadn't seen the house yet, and you staying with us for a few days, you and Charity. And one thing I've been thinking about, I'm
going to lay on this couch like I'm in counseling.
Yeah. That's the most expensive piece of furniture I've ever purchased, by the way, in my life. Also,
I'm going to put my feet on it like Charlotte.
Oh, it's fine. You can put your feet on it. It's how would you
like
describe
Rick
this?
James.
It's a leather couch like you would see in Downton Abbey. Like that couch, when I die, I guarantee you that couch is still going to be sitting right there in that spot. It's just a nice leather couch. So we were talking, and I'm teaching a master's MED programming class, and it's forcing me to distill this minimum effective dose programming information down into more organized thought and bite-sized chunks. I want to be able to explain this to people who are not advanced level coaches, who are not expert coaches, but they can understand the overarching principles of this programming, because I think that's, man, the problem with programming is that it has to be different for everybody because everybody's different. So the question is, what is the same? Well, the principles are the same, right? Like what I mean by that is, on a practical level, is the first change you're going to make the same with everybody? Probably not. But here's what but there's only a handful of things you can do in step 1. But by the time you get to step 8, it's a far broader number of practical changes that you can make. So we need to understand the very basics of the most sensible, overarching principles that guide our minimum effective dose programming changes. And remember, we keep using the term MED or minimum effective dose, and that's right. But what we want minimum effective dose for maximum return on investment, right? That's the deal. So if I have to make a 50% change in my programming in order to get a 3% return,
something's wrong.
Yeah, it's probably not worth it. There's probably a better choice I could have made. And so we started talking about that at lunch today, and I said, man, I was actually sitting on the toilet using my bidet, and it just came to me. It did.
It just it all just cleaned up all at once.
It just cleaned up all at once.
Well,
very quickly.
Yeah, you had your eureka moment, not in the bathtub like Archimedes, but on the bidet, yeah. And I think that these 3 principles, and I'm getting ready to name them, sum up what we have been doing.
Yep.
So it's nothing new. It's just what we've been doing, but you put it in 3.
Yeah, we try to tighten it up as much as we can, and they are what?
Well, we've talked about the 3 principles that we use to determine which movements to use.
Yep.
So helpful.
Yes.
So helpful. And so these 3 ideas help us figure out how we want to do our programming. We're looking for simplicity first. Over complexity.
Yep. Simplicity over complexity.
We choose intensity over volume. And then lastly, we seek out economy versus excess.
Yeah.
And if we apply these 3 ideas to the whole myriad of choices in front of us when we're doing the programming, it gives us ditches that we can stay between. It gives us guide rails that we can stay between, and helps us be respectful of the client. Like, there's people who are trusting us with their bodies.
Yeah.
Like, do we want it to be complex and excessive? These people are trusting us with their bodies, and so so we need to be respectful of that, and we want to be efficacious. So let's talk about simplicity first.
Yeah, so I think a really important thing that when I was trying to come up with these words were so if we think about if the overarching principles for us are simplicity, intensity, and economy, it doesn't mean that the other end of that spectrum is entirely wrong or doesn't work. So as I was trying to come up with words that were sort of antonym words for what we were trying to choose, I didn't want to choose words that were inherently negative or wrong. Because, and this is an important point, an important caveat before we ever start, volume, which is the opposite, well, let me start with complicated or complexity. Complexity, which is the opposite of simplicity, and volume, which is the opposite of intensity, and excess, which is the opposite of economy. So complexity, volume, and excess actually might work. And at some point, deep into a super advanced athlete's training, you're going to have to go down some of those routes.
That's right. An advanced athlete's programming will be more complicated, higher volume, and more excessive than the novice.
Beautiful.
It's not wrong, but we don't want to do that till we have to.
That's exactly right. We want to choose simplicity over complicated or complexity as long as we can. And we want to choose intensity over volume as long as we can, and we want to choose economy over excess as long as we can. So let's start with the first. So you said simplicity.
I want to continue to drill down on this for all those word thinkers out there that are just spurging out. You can go back and listen to our show that we did with Tim Peterson, the mechanic. Tim is an advanced athlete, and he's somewhat fragile. And Tim's programming is complicated, high volume, and excessive.
Yeah.
But it's as simple and intense and economical as it can be for him at this stage in his training.
That's right.
So we're so lucky because novices can be utterly simple, high intensity, and completely economical.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of LP.
That's right. Why do we do novice linear progression? Like, why does that work?
SIE.
That's simple. It's the most simple thing intense. You can do. The only thing that changes is intensity.
Yep.
And because of those things, we only have to train 3 times a week. And especially in the beginning, it doesn't even sniff an hour. It's the most economical thing you can do. It works beautifully. It works beautifully until it doesn't.
So now I think we've set the stage well enough.
Okay.
There's still going to be people that send us the weird emails, but they're always going to happen.
Yeah, sure.
Simplicity. What we've talked about, the 3 questions that we ask when we do the exercise selection thing. We want to make sure, does it move the most muscle mass? Does it use the most muscle mass? Does it move the most weight? Does it use it over the largest effective range of motion? And that lets us use 4 movements.
That's right.
The bench, the press, the squat, and the deadlift, not in that order, but
and
there's nothing simpler than that.
Right. Let's give credit where credit's due. Rip came up with that. Mark Ripito came up with that with starting strength. And it has been the overarching thing that has guided those starting strength principles for since 2005 when the book was written, and even probably before the book was written. Those things are incredible. And so we constantly, if you go back to our YouTube channel, we say those primary principles of most muscle mass, most weight over the greatest effective range of motion. We've said that scores of times, right? And those things work tremendously well for picking the exercises and how to perform the exercises. But they do not describe how to program those exercises. And so what these principles do of intensity or simplicity, intensity, and economy, they start to identify, well, then here's how you take those exercises and lay them out in basic, simple programming. And so again, starting strength lays it out in a novice linear progression. There are other basic linear progressions that are like that. Linear progression is beautiful and it works because it's so simple. It constantly drives up intensity. It's the only thing that's driven up. And because of those 2 things, it's incredibly economical.
Thanks to Rip. Thanks for that.
Yeah. Now, when we start to make these changes, the changes that we make, we want to keep them as simple as possible first. So you and I we've talked about this on the podcast, but when that LP starts to stop and starts to not work or starts to plateau, and we're talking about very standard LP, right? You're doing 3 sets of 5 on the squat 3 days a week, weights going up every time. You're alternating the bench press and the press 3 sets of 5, and you're probably deadlifting still 3 times a week. Maybe the very first change you make is you go to a lighter pull on Wednesday, whether that's a lighter deadlift or a barbell row or a chin or some combination thereof. Like that's a very minor change. What do you do when that stops working? I don't know. What do you do?
Well, you don't go crazy.
That's right.
I mean, you don't get super complex.
That's right.
And we're going to look for the simplest thing that we can do that will get us what we want.
Right.
So depending on who it is and what their problem is, one of the things about this MED thing that we need to talk more about is we don't just make changes. We make changes that we've selected to address specific problems.
That's right.
So if we see that the bar speed is decreasing late in the week and we suspect that the trainee is struggling to recover, then the midweek deload is in order.
That's right.
If it's a younger person and it's not about recovery necessarily, maybe it's about they need more volume, then we start to periodize a little bit.
Sure.
Things start to change. But we just do the simplest thing we can do.
And that doesn't necessarily mean one variable, right? We want to be clear that if you could change one variable and get a good return on investment, you should, but sometimes you'll have to change 2.
That's what LP is. You change one variable.
You're just changing one variable.
And it
you're
works.
Just adding intensity every single time until it doesn't. So then, a Wednesday light day is essentially changing one variable. It's a very simple, okay, Wednesday we're going to go to a lighter squat and a lighter deadlift, and we're going to keep we're probably not going to change the bench press and the press because they're happening every other workout, right? So I'm going to go to a lighter squat. Maybe it's a 20% back off. I'm going to do the same thing with the deadlift, or maybe I'm going to go to a barbell row, or maybe I'm going to do a barbell row and a chin. But it's super simple. That's it. It's just a lighter pull and a lighter squat. For most people, that's what they're going to do. And they can keep doing 3 sets of 5 on the squat on Monday and Friday and just go up on Monday and Friday. And they can keep doing 1 set of 5 on the deadlift on Monday and Friday and just keep going up for a while until they can't. And then when they can, I'm going to make another change. And that change that I'm going to make then is still going to be the simplest change I can possibly make, which might be 1 top set of 5 on squat and 2 back off sets of 5. right? So it might be, hey, I am trading. I know that the intensity or the total stress of the top set of 5 is going to go up, but then I don't have the budget anymore. I don't have the money to spend to have 3 sets of 5 at that weight. So I'm going to increase stress on the top set of 5, and I'm going to decrease stress a little bit on the 2 back-off sets of 5. That's why they're called back-offs. And it's a minor change and allows me to keep driving up intensity for as long as I can. We'll get to the intensity piece in a minute. So what are some of the changes you make, and why do you choose simplicity over complicated?
Well, one is I'm lazy.
Yeah.
I mean, really, and that comes to the economy piece. But, there's nothing more simple than squatting lighter on Wednesday.
Yeah.
I mean, it's simple in terms of the effort. It's simple in terms of the bang for your buck you get. It's simple in terms of the how many skills that new skills you have to introduce to the client. None. The amount of equipment you have to introduce to the client. None.
Right.
I mean, it's just everywhere you turn that, backing off a little bit on Wednesday to give them some rest. If that works, there's nothing.
Why would
simpler.
You do anything else?
Well, it would be crazy to do something else.
We talked about this. I think on the first time we talked about minimum effective dose, it's episode 33, somewhere in there, way back. Is that I think people often ask the wrong question when they start questioning this simple versus complicated sort of thing. They're like, but what if complicated works? Well, that's okay. Except it's the wrong question. The question is, if simple works, why would you do complicated? It doesn't make any sense.
If you've got a whole picnic basket full of complicated stuff you're doing to get stronger.
That's right.
What if we could rifle through that basket and find 2 of those things that got us maybe all of that training
maybe
effect,
all of the same, or 99%
of it.
That's right. And we've used that example with the diet stuff with Santana and our nutritionists. If they literally throw everything at you, they've got 10 or 15 cards they can play. They play all 10 or 15 cards, and you do all the right things nutritionally. And then when it plateaus, where are you going to go? When instead all I could do is, for a lot of guys, all they need to do is just the first step for people who are underweight is typically to increase the amount of calories, period. And it's often increasing the amount of calories via protein consumption. And that's it. That's the whole step. And for people who are fat, like real fat, they just need to decrease calories, and they usually need to decrease calories by decreasing their fat macro. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's not, but that's a simple thing, right?
Maybe you increase their protein. That makes them fuller, and it crowds the other calories out.
That might be right. It's a super simple piece.
But why worry about mayonnaise or anything else if we get one thing we can do?
And if that gets us the progress that we want, then we're going to ride that until it doesn't. And when it doesn't, we're going to make the next change. And so diet, people don't tend to argue this with dieting, which is interesting. Most people wouldn't say okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to eat very high protein. We're strength athletes. We're going to eat moderate to moderate high carbs. We're going to eat low fat. We're going to take thermogenics. We're going to do cardio, 4 or 5 days a week. We're going to do some high intensity cardio. We're also going to do some long, slow duration cardio. We're going to do all these things, right? We're going to do a little bit of cocaine. We're going to make sure we get ourselves a tapeworm, all the things that you could possibly do to lose weight.
Can I buy some Advocare?
Buy some Advocare,
okay.
Right? We're going to get into multi-level marketing. And then it stops work. And everybody understands that's crazy. Diets don't work that way. That's not sustainable.
What if somebody's desperate to lose the weight? They're like, I'm going to do it all. I'm in,
sure.
I'm committed.
People do it all the time. And it works really, really well for 4 to 6 weeks. And then they rebound and they end up fatter than they were when they started.
Right.
Right. And so for us, that's another really important concept here is to understand is that what we're trying to do, we're trying to work with clients. We're trying to work with our people who we're coaching forever. This is a life thing. This isn't a
is this a long-term athletic development?
It is a long
issue.
It has to be.
Right.
And let me be honest with you. If I had a guy who came to me after his senior year of college, who was potentially going to go play in the NFL in 3 months, I don't know that I would be as simple. I wouldn't have the long term in mind. If
Right,
somebody
right,
comes to me and
right.
says, hey, I'm going to pay you $25,000 to work with me for the next 3 months, and I need to be the strongest, fastest, most peaked, ready for the NFL Combine as I can possibly be in 12 weeks. Well, that's a different scenario here.
Right.
But that's not who hires me. The people who hire me are 40-year-old guys with dad bod who are like, hey, I want to be stronger, healthier. I need my waist to come down 5.5 inches over the next few months. And then I want to do this for life. This is what I want to do because it's a lifestyle change. And if that's the case, there's no reason to get complicated quickly. There's no reason to add tons of volume. There's no reason to have excess training sessions. Hey, that guy that's about to try to sign a $10 million football contract, I can work that guy 3 hours a day.
He should.
He should. But the guy that's the business executive that's working 55 hours a week and that's going home to a wife and 3 kids, that guy can't work 3 hours a day.
I'm always looking for simple. I've gotten clients that were doing some templates that throw the kitchen sink at the problem.
Sure.
And it stopped working for them. And I'm always looking for simple. So you know what we typically will do? LP again.
Yeah, right. We do it all the time.
So we're always looking for simple.
All the time.
And we look for simple in service of getting strong.
Yeah.
Right? And strength, as Rip tells us, is the ability to express force against an external resistance.
That's right.
And the way we know that's improving is when we can drive the intensity up.
That's right.
So we do the simplest thing we can until in the service of getting the weight on the bar. If the weight is constantly coming off the bar, how do we know we're doing well?
That's right. It's very difficult to have quantifiable metrics to know that you're getting stronger. This is a very important. There's been obviously, it's going to be discussed and argued for all the annals of history, intensity versus volume. But here's the thing: what is the goal of strength training?
It's to be stronger.
It's force production, and oh, by the way, force production is intensity.
Right.
Based on the way the literature describes what intensity is. Remember, it's not how intense does it feel.
Right.
Intensity literally means how heavy. That's literally what it means. That's the simple definition of intensity. How heavy. Volume is how much. And so if I can keep pushing up how heavy and don't even have to worry about how much, and how heavy keeps getting heavier, then I'm going to do that as long as I can.
Yep.
Now, at some point, I'm going to have to increase how much. But until I have to, why would I? Because the goal is force production. Hey, listen, if the goal is tonnage, if the goal is volume, if the goal is hypertrophy, if the goal is reps, if the goal is sets, then you could argue the same thing on behalf of volume, but that's not the goal for us.
That's fine.
The goal is force production. If Jay Cutler comes to me and says, hey, I want to go back and win the Mr. Olympia, the goal is not force production for Jay Cutler. No. It's to be as big as he possibly can. It's hypertrophy. Okay, different goal. But what we do is we make people strong. And we make people strong because it makes everything else better. And if strong is force production, then strong is intensity. And that's why intensity must take precedence over volume forever. It doesn't mean we never use volume. It means that intensity always takes precedence over it. It must.
Whenever we do volume, it's in service of the intensity. So we've got to see 5, 3, and 1 rep PRs.
That's right.
Trend up over time. Listen, guys, don't be silly. Not every session, right? Not every session.
Yeah, but
every
often
session
as possible.
But for a while, that's what LP is. That's why it's so wonderful.
Listen, I think that there are arguments that can be made for even advanced athletes. This is why I have a. It's not that it's wrong, that I think it's incomplete to say that novices make progress every 48 hours. I don't like the word progress. And the intermediates make progress every week, and that advanced lifters make progress on a monthly basis. And progress is usually defined as PRs. But I can go back to my clients and show that my advanced lifters Charity, your wife, who's very advanced, one of the more advanced females in the country right now, she makes progress and actually sets PRs numerous times every week, almost every week. Now, that doesn't mean it's a 1 rep max PR. It might be a 1, it might be a 3, it might be a 5, it might be a 3x5, it might be a 4x4.
Right.
It might be a beltless PR. Today, she was pressing with no belt and no shoes. She was barefooted, no belt, pressing. And she could actually track those PRs. But here's what we know. The greatest metric to show that we are getting stronger is PRs. That's PRs are the thing. That's the thing. And it doesn't mean it's 1 rep max all the time, but PRs are what we're chasing as often as possible. It might not be every session. Eventually it can't be every session. But I don't think that an advanced athlete who's on a 12-week program hits PRs once every 12 weeks.
No.
I think they hit PRs a lot during those 12-week period. They just don't hit 1 rep maxes during that 12-week period.
The guy at the 12-week block is going to get a 5x5, a 3x5, a 5, a 3, and a 1 rep PR probably in the course of that.
Yeah, probably a 5 sets of 3, a 4 sets of 4.
Yeah.
The guys that do block training every time when I have them do a block training cycle a second time and a third time through, I'll go back and look at, like I've got Harry Fafudis right now. He's getting ready to he's training for the coaches meet, and I looked and saw like, well, what did he do for his 4 sets of 4 last time? Then I made sure that his 4 sets of 4 this time was heavier.
Yep.
And he knows that. Now, some of my athletes don't, some of my lifters don't care that much, but he knows this is a 4x4 PR. This is a 5 sets of 3 PR. This is, whatever. This is a 5 sets of 2. This is a 5 singles across PR. Those PRs matter because they give us tracking and say, you know what? 16 weeks ago, 12 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, I did the same set and rep scheme at a lower weight 16 weeks ago or 12 weeks ago or 8 weeks ago, and now I'm doing it at a higher weight. That's a PR. I have quantifiable evidence that I got stronger.
I don't even know what else to say about that. If you can't quantify it, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Well, at some point, we have to build hypertrophy, and we have to build work capacity, and we have to drive up stress. And I can't drive up stress forever by just increasing intensity. So eventually, I have to utilize volume. So that's why I want to be clear. It's not that intensity is good and volume is evil. It's that we want to pick intensity over volume really all the time for as long as we can. And at some point, we have to begin to drive up the volume in order to eventually drive up the intensity. But that's down the line, and intensity should always take precedent over volume because the goal is force production. And force production is intensity.
There's this argument that, like, let's say somebody has a 175 for a set of 5 press. I'm just going to do this math in my head, so the numbers might be a little weird. But for an individual person, he has a 175 for 5, and then he turns around a week later and he presses 187.5 for triple, and then later on he presses 200 for a single. Like, there's an argument out there that's like, oh, that's all the same. Right? That's all the same. 180, because as the intensity went up, the volume dropped. Use your estimated 1 rep max calculator or your Windler calculator, whatever you want to do. And they're like, oh, those are all, it's the same thing. Nothing happened.
Right.
Nothing happened. And so my explanation of what actually happened was your mistake, you made a category error. You compared the 5, the 3, and the 1 that were obtained in one training cycle to everything that happened inside the training cycle. Yep. And you should have compared the 5 to the 5 from the previous training cycle. Right. The 3 to the 3 in the training cycle.
That's the apples to apples.
That's right. Because it might be right that a 5 at 175, 3 at 187.5, and 1 at 200 for a specific client with a specific muscle fibers is essentially the same lift. Maybe.
Sure.
The same expression of strength, perhaps.
Maybe the 1 is just a performance. That's the argument.
Yeah, that may be. But if you compare it to the 1 from the previous cycle, that's our scorecard. And we know that if the 5 and the 3 in particular went up, particularly multiple 5s, multiple 3s went up, that the stress went up, the expression of strength went up, and that as coaches, we're doing what we're supposed to do.
Sure. Yep.
God damn it. Like if those things don't go up, how do we know that we've earned our money and we've provided value to the client? I don't understand why this is controversial in the least, and I'm tired of talking about it. Let's now talk about economy.
Hold on. The last thing I want to say is that there is an argument that will go around and probably be here for ages that says that a one rep max or a single or a double or even a heavy triple is really an expression of strength, or it's a performance. It is not in and of itself a stressor that will cause an adaptation, right? And that actually potentially makes sense on paper. I'm not even going to say that's wrong on paper, but my experience has been that I have had lots of clients who do a top single and 2 back off triples, or 5 singles across, or 3 singles across for 8 weeks, 9 weeks, 10 weeks in a row, and the 5 singles across or the 3 singles across that they did on week 1 was heavy, and the 3 singles across they did on week 8 were 45, 50 pounds heavier and were just as heavy
Bar speed
on an
unchanged.
RPE type scale, right? They clearly got stronger. And they got stronger. And the only thing they did was heavy. They weren't increasing volume at all during this time. They just used intensity as the stress driver. So I believe that even one rep maxes. Well, look, we know in Marty Gallagher's book, in The Purposeful Primitive, he talks about Mark Chalet, who literally worked up to a heavy single on the lifts and walked out of the gym, and then every week just went up to a heavier single, heavier single, heavier single, heavier single. Something was happening there. And that's, Mark Chalet is not the only guy to ever do that, right? There are lots of guys. Westside does this all the time. They change the exercise. They use a different exercise variants, but they go up on squat and they work up to a max effort single on a squat movement every single week. And they keep getting stronger. Well, that tells me that heavy can be a stress driver. It can disrupt homeostasis to the point that it drives the adaptation, because specificity is involved, because what I'm trying to do is get stronger. Now, does that mean that volume won't make people strong? Of course not. Look, man, you look at these bodybuilders, some of these guys who are really, really big and have tons of muscle, and they start to try to get stronger. They are strong already, and they get stronger and stronger and stronger when they start training for strength. I'm not saying that bigger muscles, that volume, that hypertrophy won't lead to intensity. That's not what we're saying at all.
You need them all. They're all tools in your toolbox.
They're all tools in the box. However, if intensity can be continually driven up without driving up volume, I'm going to do that as long as I can.
It's LP. That's what we do.
And I'm going to do that because of principle number 3 of economy over excess. If I can keep getting stronger with a top set of 5 and 2 back off sets of 5, or a top set of 3 and 2 back off sets of 3, then why would I do 5 sets of 5,
God,
or 6 sets of 5, or 7 sets of 5?
That sounds so good. A top set of 3 and some back offs.
That's what I do, and it still works. It works for me personally. Right? Now, it doesn't work for me for everything. Like, it doesn't work for bench press anymore.
Yeah, don't think over simply when we're talking about this, by the way. So you'll work up, like today, I watched you today. You worked up to some low volume, heavy squats with chains.
Yep. Top triple is what I worked up to today.
That's what you worked up to today on the squat. Earlier this week, what was your squat volume though?
So earlier this week on squat volume, I worked up and I did a 485 squat for a single, and then I did 2 sets of 5 back offs at 425. Now, remember, I'm 40 years old and need hip replacement. So that volume, some people would still say that volume's fairly low, but the tonnage is still decently high. And on deadlifts, I did the same thing. On deadlifts, I did a very low rack pull, like a 3-inch off-the-ground rack pull, and I worked up to 585 there. And then I did 2 back-off sets of 5 on those. So the tonnage was fairly...
And let's be frank, you're coming back from being really quite detrained.
Super detrained.
Like a stressful year.
That's right.
Not training.
Didn't
Dad's
train
sick.
at all for like 10 weeks straight at one point, moving into the house and business changes and
Dad's sick, all that stuff. And so you came back, and I think you called me, and I think you squatted just a single set of 5 at 225.
Yep,
I think that's what it was. You're like, it was so heavy, and I'm wrecked.
Felt awful. I was sore.
So here in the last 8 to 10 weeks, you're now squatting in the high 4s for some sets.
I actually squatted 500 for a double 2 weeks ago. And that wasn't really planned. It just felt good, and it was there. And I was like, let's do that for the top set. Then I did some back off sets. But yeah, my volume's not very high right now because I can just keep driving up intensity.
So it's working.
And so it's working, and one day it won't.
Yep.
But why would I have done today 5 sets of 5?
That would have been excessive.
It would have been excessive.
That would have been excessive.
Now, there is a day that is coming when I'm going to have to go from a top set and 2 back off sets to a top set and 3 back off sets. And then at some point, I might have to have a volume day with 4 working sets, and I might have to have 5 working sets. I'm definitely going to have to do that on my upper body lifts.
Yep.
For sure. That's coming sooner rather than later. But as long as I can train with some economy and I can get in and out of the gym in under an hour, go heavy, and go heavier every single session, every single week, why would I do anything different? Why would I want to train 2 hours?
There's probably some midwit right now thinking, yeah, but that isn't heavy for Reynolds. But you did 225 for 5. You called. You're like, I'm wrecked. Heavy. You couldn't have squatted 485 for a triple.
I couldn't have squatted 405 for a single. It would have buried me.
Yeah.
When I did 225 for 5, my first workout back, 405 for a single would have buried me. It would not have happened.
Right.
And I just kept doing what I did there is I kept doing a heavier set of 5. I actually went 225 for 5. I came back a few days later. I did 275 for 5. I came back a few days later. I did 315 for 5. Then I did 335. Then I did 350, right? So smaller jumps.
Right.
Then 365, right? And so on and so forth. That's what we did. And so it's if I can train in a simple manner, making the weight heavier every session, and in a short period of time. And because the weight got heavier every session, I've got a quantifiable metric that I got stronger. Why would I do anything else? And by the way, of course that is LP. But what about when it's not LP and it's just other, like you're down the road a little bit? The point is that I still want to train as simple as possible. I still want to train as heavy as possible, and I still want to train as economical as possible. Always, forever. By the way, I said this. I think I had somebody in my class say, I said this about Jillian Muncie Ward. We've had her on the podcast twice, right? I think we did a 2-part series with her. She's the most advanced athlete I've ever coached. By the way, she might be the most advanced athlete that's ever lived. Like, she's in the discussion. She's a freak of all freaks. Yep. She set the Guinness Book of World Records in numerous different things, right? She set the Guinness Book of World Records for push-ups when she was 16 years old. And I was her coach for maybe 4 years, 3.5 years, somewhere in there. And when she trained, I really honed my knowledge of block training on her. And her block training, if you look at it, was still pretty simple. She trained to something heavy on the main lift, the competitive lift, with back offsets, and then she did a supplemental movement for the other lift. So she would do like a heavy set of squats for a triple, and then she would do 4 sets of 4 back offs on the squat, and then she would do some supplemental deadlift. She'd do a rack pull or a deficit for 3 sets of 5, and then she would do some accessory movements for 15 minutes, and she was a CrossFitter, so she could do like high volume accessory stuff, get a good blood pump, and walk out of the gym, and she was done, and that wasn't that complicated. And she's the most advanced lifter that's maybe ever lifted in the world. Like, it doesn't have to be complicated. Complication for complication's sake is ridiculous. That's trying to sell templates is what it's doing.
Complicate to profit.
That's right. It's complication for profit.
We have to be economical with our client. And if you're doing your own programming, you're your own client.
Yeah.
You have to be economical with the time, with the equipment, with their bodies.
That's right.
And with skill acquisition too.
That's right.
Like, how many movements I can't master a squat.
Sure.
Like, how many movements can an amateur athlete master?
Sure.
Muscle ups, ring dips, cartwheels. I mean, so even the skills, like I don't want to add a lot of skills.
Sure.
And that's why we like to push a prowler for conditioning. Like,
Right.
Anybody can do it. There's no form.
That's right.
I'm never going to, well, that's not true. There's very little coaching to be done on a prowler push.
That's right. Sure.
So it's great.
Yeah.
Being economical with time. I mean, we all know that that's true. Like, clients that get to be late intermediates or resting between their sets. Maybe they're just resting 4 minutes.
Yeah.
But they've got 5 sets of their volume movement for the day. Maybe they got 3 for their intensity movement for the day, and then accessories. And they're like, God, handbrake, I'm spending 2 hours and 7 minutes a session. It's in 4-day split even. I don't want them to be in that situation, and so I avoid that as long as I can.
You're not training a professional athlete whose job is to train.
Well, those people.
Well, even they should be as simple as possible and as economical as possible. But for us and the people that we're coaching, that's not who they are. They have a job. They have a family. They have things that are important outside of the weight room. So I remember going to Seoul, South Korea, and training at the Olympic Training Center with the team. Their whole life was training, eating. By the way, the eating was amazing. We got to eat in the cafeteria. Imagine like a really nice college cafeteria with the best food you could So it wasn't filet mignon, but it was like all the really high end good chicken breast you could want, sushi, soup, all the fresh fruit and vegetables, rice, all that kind of stuff. So they ate, they trained, they slept, they got massage. That was it. It was their life.
And so even with those guys who are going to the Olympics,
right?
If I can be economical with their training time, so they have more time to recover,
that's exactly right.
Then they still win.
I still have pictures of their training, like weekly breakdown of their training. It was amazing the few number of exercises they did. Now they didn't train like the Bulgarians. So if you go to the Bulgarians, and maybe the Bulgarians are the best option, right? How do the Bulgarians train? So most people know this at this point. They literally worked up to heavy singles every single workout, and they often train like 5 to 6 days a week, twice a day.
Twice a day.
So twice a day, 5 times. That's right.
93%.
That's right. They would have
range
one off day. So usually in a week, they would train like twice a day, 5 days a week. They would train once a day, one time a week, and they would have one complete day off. And they would do the snatch, the clean and jerk, the back squat, and the front squat. And that was it.
No deads.
Well, yeah, no, they would deadlift a little bit, but not a lot. They
probably only deadlift once a week.
Or they would do like real heavy, what we would call like clean pulls. So they would do real heavy clean pulls where they would have like a power pull at the top, and so they do kind of a shrug. Yeah, and it'd come up to like their belly button and set it back down. So that maybe those guys you would say would train. Those were the most economical trainers there were, trainees. But when we went to Korea, those guys, it wasn't much more. It was those movements plus. They did clean and snatch grip deadlifts, and they did strict presses, and that was about it. So they did back squat, front squat, clean and jerks, snatches. They would do some heavy snatch pulls off blocks, But I mean, like their entire exercise selection was maybe like 10 exercises. It wasn't 20.
I've been doing Nikki Berman's programming on the heels of you doing her programming and Santana doing their programming. She's pretty advanced, really.
Yeah, sure.
She's just squatting, pressing, bench pressing, and deadlifting.
That's what she does.
That's it.
Yep.
And she's getting PRs. She's getting volume or intensity PRs.
Yep.
Sometimes both every day.
Yeah.
She's not even chinning. I don't even have her chin right now.
Oh, no.
I just added a pin bench press,
like with the bar hovering like 2 inches off her chest.
I'm just trying to work her lockout.
Yeah. She's overloaded,
but that's it. That's the only variant, and she's still getting PRs. She's been doing this stuff for years. She never misses a session, and she's pretty darn advanced. It's just so simple. Yeah, the weight keeps going
Charity? Up. How many different exercises does Charity do? Well,
5.
How many squats does she do?
She low bar squat. That's it. Period.
She does no box squat right now.
No,
she has no tempo squat, no pin squat. She's squatting only.
Yeah, for 3 months.
How about deadlifts? Just deadlifts? Or should you ever do rack pulls or deficits?
Never deficits. Occasionally does rack pulls.
Okay. Presses. She does presses, and occasionally she does press lockouts.
Yep.
Bench press.
Bench press, she's doing, of course, standard bench press, and then she uses a slingshot some.
Okay. And that's it, right?
That's it.
And then she does some chins, or does she do...
She's not doing any... I haven't seen her do chins or pull down
nothing.
Anything.
Any conditioning right now? Any prowler? Any...
No.
Bike? Nothing?
No.
So here you've got a very advanced athlete, got a good chance of winning nationals this year. She's got about 6 exercises she's doing. It's single digits.
Yep.
That's it. Economy.
And, and it's economy everywhere you turn. Like we got a squat rack, a bench, some barbells, and some plates.
Yeah,
that's all she does.
By the way, is there a part of you... I feel right now like we're like trying to defend it. Like it feels like I'm in defense of economy. No. And there is beauty in this. Like that, it's so beautiful.
That's why I want everybody to pay their debt off.
Motherfucker. Yeah, that's right.
It's so simple. I was almost thinking it's so economical.
That's exactly right. Like no one would argue with you about, so right. Well, they would, but
fuck.
So you could day trade, right?
Yeah.
You could day trade.
Yep. And
you might get a bigger return on investment for day trading.
Maybe.
You certainly could.
Maybe.
You also can lose it all.
Yep.
You know how we know you're not going to lose it all? If you pay off your debt.
Yep. And if I day trade.
If you have credit card debt and you're like, hey, minimum effective dose, right? That's really what this is.
Yep.
Financial minimum effective dose.
Step
Especially
one.
If you have revolving credit card debt. Minimum effective dose. Step 1, pay off the revolving credit card debt.
Stop the bleeding.
That's it.
Stop the bleeding.
No 401k, no index fund, no S&P 500, no Vanguard, no Fidelity.
How much research time does it take to do that?
Nothing. Go work extra jobs, mow lawns, take that money, pay off your credit card debt. Done. Minimum effective dose 1.
How much
credit card
invested in
debt's
skill?
paid off.
How much skill? None.
None.
I mean, so these
right. So these people, and then you've had these people that write you like, you should buy the biggest house you can get into. You should get a 30-year mortgage. You should do all this. Like that's and what I'm going to do, because my 30-year mortgage, I can get it at a 3.8% rate. I can get a better rate than that and they overcomplicate. It's excess.
And they take
it's
risks.
Volume. It's risk. You're like, hey, you know what? If you pay off that 16% credit card debt,
guarantee you what the result is.
That's right.
Guarantee you what the result is.
So that's what this is. This is, guys, if you can put weight on the barbell every single time, and you can keep your training to 4 or 5 or 6 exercises, and you can train in under an hour, why would you want to do other things? Why are we defending this? This is a beautiful thing.
It's interesting you think you're defending it. I want to disabuse. I want to disabuse everybody else of anything else.
Yeah, right.
I've been writing. I've got a friend. He's like, you need to write some essays. Like I sent him bunch of those essays that I wrote that I was telling you about.
Yeah.
He's like, dude, you need to do more of this.
Yeah.
So I started writing one about critical thinking, and then you and I started talking about this, and I'm looking at this. This is really about critical thinking and problem solving.
That's right.
Occam's razor, you want it to be as simple as you can possibly be. Here you say intensity. I think how about this? We could say, if you're thinking about investments or anything else, how about focus on the primary goal? Like,
that's right.
Our goal is to put weight on the bar.
Right.
So, by God, that we should adhere to that. We should adhere to that goal.
That's right.
So, you want a simple solution that focuses on the goal, that's as economical as possible. And I think that you could apply this to anything you're thinking about. And we're thinking about programming for strength. And so these are the ways that we would do that. Yeah. I don't know. Is there anything else you want to say about this? I want to be economical with their body.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is true, but I kind of think about these joints as having like a service life.
Sure.
Like how many times can you bend an elbow?
Yeah. It's like shocks on a truck.
It's got 1.3 million cycles in an elbbo,
Right.
And
at some point, you got to get the new brake pads put on.
And I want to be economical with that.
That's right. Sure.
And and I don't want to ask. We have a responsibility. We tell people to do things and they do them.
Yep.
So we need to be really cautious about what we tell them to do.
Sure.
And
There's a responsibility there.
and,
For
and
sure.
there's a moral and ethical responsibility, because we're telling these people to do something with their bodies, and they've entrusted us to do that, and they've imputed some sort of authority on us, whether we deserve it or not. And I want to be economical with their bodies too. So really, we could probably draw a diagram full of arrows that point from simplicity to intensity to economy, and then back to the other ones. Like they all, simple is economical, right? And the economical typically is simple.
Sure.
And all of that drives the intensity. And if you get away from the intensity, you have to go up at the volume. Well, that's not as simple or economical.
That's exactly right.
There are a bunch of arrows that point that just rotate around and point to each of these.
They're directly related. It's the same thing with the starting strength principles, where you say like most muscle mass, most weight. Well, like obviously you can use more weight if you use more muscle mass, right? Greatest effective range of motion.
The reason
right,
that one's so good is like you could use the most muscle mass, but just choose to go light.
Correct.
I'm going to do a deficit deadlift with the bar.
Or you could do greatest effective range of motion. You could do air squats.
Right.
Right. Right. Right. Yeah. So exactly same thing. So for us, if it's simple, then it's intense. If it's simple and intense, it's economical.
Or it needs to be.
Well, it's right. It should be.
All of these should be in service of each other.
Right. So simplicity, intensity, economy are our overarching values in minimum effective dose programming. It just makes sense. Intensity over volume, simplicity over complexity, economy over excess. Those things are important for us. And that's what we use to drive those minimum effective dose changes. So when you are programming yourself, or you're a coach that's listening to this and you're programming for your clients, choose simplicity over complexity when you can. Choose intensity over volume when you can, and there will be a day that you can't.
Yep.
And choose economy over excess as long as you can, and there will be a day where you're going to have to add some excess. But as long as I can keep it those three things, I'm going to do those things, and I'm going to stay as tight as I can, as close to that side of the road of simplicity, intensity, and economy as I can.
We want to be economical with our excess.
That's right. That's right.
There's another Barbell Logic podcast. Guys, send this to all of your friends. Post links to this on all of your social media stuff, and help other people find out about our show. That's a big, big help to us. We don't have an advertising budget for the show, and we depend on you guys to spread it around for us. So please do that. And if you have questions about this or anything else that we've talked about, send those questions to questions@barbell-logic.com, and we'll answer those on a Saturday show, unless it's just all rants.
Which it was.
Like this Saturday, it was just all
today.
rants.
We just ranted about bidets and billionaires.
Bidets and billionaires.
Bidets and billionaires. That'd be a good MTV show, or like E Entertainment. Is that what it is? That TV? I haven't even had TV in 15 years.
Well, thanks for listening to this, guys. Go to iTunes and leave us a review there. Those are always helpful. I think we're getting close to 800 5 stars. I don't know.
8,000.
8,000. Let's go.
Thank you. Exaggeration.
Thank you guys for listening. We'll talk to you in just a few days.